Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Common Ground is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota. Hi, and welcome to Common Ground. I'm your host, Ashley Hall. On this week's episode of Common Ground, Jane Hastig, a glass artist from Bemidji, shows us how to be green by using recycled glass for art. We take a tour of the first annual Lot 6 Art Fair. Plus, Mary Harrison of Sebeka shows us her artistic creations using all types of beads.
I'm Jane Marks Hastig, and I'm a green glass artist, which means I take glass that would be thrown away and turn it into beautiful art. The glass I'm using in this project is tempered safety glass. We have a glass shop, and this is a type of glass that can't be recycled. So we throw a lot of it away, and this type of glass would be in certain windows or tabletops or side glasses of a car, and it pebbles into small little easy to handle, safe little pebbles of glass. And it's really pretty when the light hits it. And I just was throwing so much of it away, I thought there has to be something we can do with it. So I found a way to paint it, and that's what I'm using on this glass-on-glass mosaic. And it's not a traditional mosaic. I use a lot of open negative space to let the light through, but it's really a cool medium because of the transparency of the glass. You can work on both sides. You can add a lot of depth. And this is this project is called Broken Arted, and the concept is that sometimes you have to break your heart a little to get the good stuff out. So it's a work in progress, but I'm just starting it today. And the glue I use cures up with sunlight, which is kind of fun to use another natural element. And it's great because it takes a long time for it to cure. The nice thing about this glue is I can move it around and it won't cure until it's exposed to UV light. If I don't like something, then I can just move it around. And this forms a really strong bond. Now that I've gotten it here, I've covered up all the glue I have, I would take this now and go set it outside and let that cure up so that the next stage has something to push back against. And then I'll move on to the next piece. When you cut tempered, it wouldn't cut in a straight line, it would break into a million little pieces. So when we get pieces that are measured wrong or are taken out of a house or something, we can't cut them down for something else. And I was moving a piece out in our shop and it broke into a million pieces, and I was sort of heartbroken because I was trying to save this piece and that was in a million pieces. I went to get a broom to clean it up, and the sun was just coming in on it, and it just sparkles off all these cool little edges and was so pretty. I thought, I've got to start trying to do something with it. One of the beauties is I have not had to go and buy any colored glass. And there's a lot of beautiful colored glass out there, but so far I've been able to just use what I found, and I found a way to color it and get all these really great colors. But it's something that I invented, so I don't really want to share that yet because it's still kind of new, and I kind of want to keep some secrets to myself. This is an example of pieces that didn't temper well, and they're not supposed to break this way. This would be actually dangerous coming at you if you were in an accident and this was from the back glass, and that's what it would be from. You can see the little lines in there are from heat grids, but they're really cool for my purposes because they're still safe to handle. And I could paint them or even use them as is, and they could be icicles or they could be blades of grass or part of a flower. So I have been able to find a lot of really neat things in the broken glass. What I'm going to do is cover the entire thing with red, because that's what she had asked for, but it's going to wind up looking like this. And this was an old wine bottle that we cut, and it's really nice and heavy. You can use it for a vase or candle holder or whatnot. So this is a sandpaper specifically for glass. It's something we would use to smooth the edges of glass, but what I will do is take it and scratch it up. And it's fine to scratch it up because we're not going to see that through the glass. If I was doing something more clear, I wouldn't want to do that, which is why on the big projects I like to use that UV glue. But since this is so rounded, it would be impossible to get that to adhere. So I scuff it up just to give it the glue something to bite against. And you have to be careful you don't get the glass too hot while you're doing this, because it can crack. So you gotta be a little careful. And when I've got it good and scuffed, I just kind of get a nice swipe just to make sure that it's not too dusty. Make sure I've got enough glue here. And it's good to let this sit a little bit so it gets a little bit tacky. And it's always tricky working with something round. It will move away on you. Oh. And this I have to work pretty quickly, so I usually do a small amount at a time. And it's great when I can do a project that's using the same kind of glass, because then I can pretty quickly move through. And often I will try to put a lot of clear glass in, because the clear glass really shows light through. If this were going to be a candle holder, I would do that. You can see it bends down a little bit here. What I thought I would do is on this part take a new color of glass and do a stripe of that and just sort of play with the natural break that it has. And then this is the part that requires patience, that elusive patience that I never used to have. This will take actually a long time. And so I will sit and hold this. It's actually a good project while I'm watching TV or doing something like that. And it's really nice and relaxing, but it'll take a long time to finish this. This project will probably, I'll do it in several stages, and it will probably take a couple weeks to get it completely done, because then when I'm finished, I will put a coating on it. But it'll turn out looking something like this one. And this was one of my first pieces that I did, and I loved it because I didn't paint any of this glass. This was all glass from a window, and you can see some of the bluer green that was actually tinted in the glass, so it came that way. When I first discovered this and then decided I could paint it, I wasn't thinking that I would use it as an artist at all, but I thought artists might use it. So I just started to come up with ideas, and I researched mosaics, and I thought maybe somebody, but how will I market it? Because that's where I come from, is more of a marketing background. And I thought, well, I should see if it'll stick to something. So I used the guys at the shop. What kind of glue would you use? How would you do this? And I found these 3 old frames that a clockmaker had left at our shop and never picked up, and he's since passed away, so they were gonna throw those away. And I just started doing a tree. And I made this tree, and it actually looked really cool, and then I had some colors that looked like leaves and put them on there, and it was like a whole new world opened up. Once I started covering things with glass, I wanted to see what else I could cover, and I had these shoes that I loved, but they were so painful I couldn't wear them. I wore them once, but they were beautiful, so I thought maybe I can cover these with glass, and they turned out so cool, and they've been so popular. Now people are wanting me to do them, and they want them in their size so they can wear them, which would be really hard to do, but they're really pretty. I've had someone use them as like little bookends, or you know, I have one on my desk for a key caddy, and it's just a unique thing. I didn't have to throw the shoe away, and it was too painful. Nobody else would wear it either. But it's pretty, and people seem to really like it. This was a unique piece that I did because in the other pieces I use a lot of negative space, a lot of open space, and this I actually filled in with glass and then used a glue to cover it and fill in the little pieces. So it looks a little bit more like a traditional mosaic. And these are irises. They're my mom's favorite flower. And I actually made this for her. And one of the fun things about doing the pieces is having cute little names. I'm trying to get them to move back here from Florida. So this piece I'm gonna give to her when they do, and it's called I Wish You Were Here. It's corny, but it's my favorite part. This is just a really cool way to show the wine bottle rolling pins that I make. They're really, really pretty. It's a non-traditional rolling pin, and it's something that you could put in your window to show it off, and I can do all kinds of colors. This piece, I'm actually trying to experiment with different backgrounds. A lot of times I'll just have it clear in the back because someone could put it in a window, and it's neat to see that reflection through. But sometimes somebody wants to put it on a wall. And so this was actually some old sheet music that I just sort of ripped up, and that's on the back piece of glass. And I just thought it was really fun. And these are actually little glass beads from a beaded necklace that I had that I didn't love anymore. So I just cut it up and made little apples, and it was one of my favorite pieces too. This was the pine tree piece. And it's actually, there's glass on both sides. I didn't enclose this one in, so you can touch it. It has a lot of cool texture. And these are just, I call it the trees in my yard collection. So just look out and I get to live in such a cool place, so it's really fun to be able to honor that. Nobody's done anything like this, and I love finding objects that I don't really want to throw away, but I redazzle them, I guess, with glass.
Today is the first ever Bad Cat Creations Lot 6 Art Fair. It's a juried art fair for downtown Bemidji. It's a mostly local Bemidji area artists, but we did get some outside artists involved too. We did a call for artists, and we just had people apply. And we've got artists of all mediums and styles, and we've had performers and face painters, and it's just been fun.
I think it's important for a community to have events like this because it brings community together and it gives people a common bond to share experiences and appreciate their community more.
We have over 30 artists this time. We're hoping to expand in the years to come. We kind of went small to begin with. We didn't want to overcrowd. We wanted it to be comfortable. And we encouraged everybody, if they could do a demonstration, to bring stuff, do their demos, talk about their work, meet the public. We've got a lot of first-timers for art fairs. So a lot of these people here today, this is their first show. So it's kind of exciting to get them out there and show them to the rest of the world. We're surprised and happy that everybody came out. It's been surprising and wonderful that everybody has really good feedback so far. We've had a couple people say that they think this is their favorite art fair in Bemidji now, which I think that's crazy. But yeah, we've got a lot of really, really good positive feedback, and people want us to expand. We've had, I think probably one of the most surprising things I've heard somebody ask me today is, could you do this every week? No. Sorry. And then we was like, well, could you do this every month? If there were more people involved, maybe. But we hope to do it every year.
Well, I think it's a good draw for the local economy, the businesses. It brings people downtown into the area here. A lot of the artists and crafts get, draw some of their support and stuff, for their sales and vending and everything else that they may do.
I think it's really important that we have things like this because there are some shops in town, of course, that sell local artist stuff, and you can go into a shop and buy a local artist piece, but getting that one-on-one connection to the artist and knowing the story behind the piece, maybe even getting to see them make it, is so important. And with there being some cuts to arts, I think it's even more important that we expose people to how these are all done, so that it shows like what the work it is to go into designing some of these pieces. Sometimes I think that if you don't know, if you don't create, you get surprised when you see something and say, wow, like that's a lot of work that went into just that one thing. It gives you a whole new appreciation for it. So the more exposure I think the general public have to artists and creating, I think the better for the community. And it's also a great way locally too for people to come down and see these people who live right in their own community and are creating.
I think you can sometimes judge a community by how well they honor art, because art is our language. It's a language that all people share.
Another important part about doing an event like this and in our community is bringing a lot of these artistic people together to meet each other, the artists meeting artists. You never know when collaborations can happen and how ideas can commingle. The idea for this event was actually brought on by a complete brainstorming session between myself and another artist, Melissa Bernas, who does the kaleidoscope photography. And it was just, an innocent comment to her. She said, Christina, one day you should do an open house for Bad Cat and invite all the artists to come and meet each other. And I said, oh, but the store's so small. We'd have to wait and do it outside in the summertime. And one by one, next thing you know, we were having an art fair. And we just want to make another really good quality juried festival in Bemidji. Like there's, Art in the Park is like the main one, and we wanted to bring another one as good a quality as Art in the Park. and we didn't want to have it too close so that they would compete.
I took the opportunity to walk around and check out a lot of the local artists and some of the craft stands here, some of the face paintings and everything else that they got going on right here.
I like the Middle Eastern dancing because I used to do that for a couple years here too, and I enjoyed seeing that, you know, because that brings in other forms of art, the dance, the music, the painting, and I think that really made the show, made the day.
A lot of the first timers, like, they were really unsure about doing their first festival, really nervous, and I said, you know, when I first got going, I had a lot of people that helped me, and I want to return that favor. And so I just said, you know, let's do it. I'll help you. I'll be there. I'll make sure your tent's weighted down. I'll make sure everything's good to go. Like, I will help you get this going.
Aftermath. Crush a wild raspberry. Between your fingertips, you are bleeding. Red juice sluices as from an unrepentant wound, drops off your finger and splashes suddenly thin onto a wild ginger leaf. Crush a wild raspberry between your fingertips, raise it to your lips. Red juice stains the toe of your boots, the laces, your chin. Later you will remember the red sting of sweetness, the puckering green of shame.
I have been described as a jack of all trades, and that's not unfair. And so it has taken me a very, very long time to start to think of myself as an artist. I always just did things for a purpose. And when I started working in theater and designing and building sets, that was very much the same kind of thing. How do I find something here that I can make look like something else that will do for whatever requirements this show needs, that will please the director and the audience will know what we're doing, but also looks kind of cool and neat. And you know, I did that for years before I really realized there was art involved in that. And it was when other people began calling me an artist that I kind of went, oops, well, yeah, maybe, I guess that works. And I started doing beadwork for the same reason and found myself absolutely fascinated with the colors of beads and the history of them and the fact that I have traded things I have made for old beads that are 200 or 300 years old that were made as trade beads and are still being traded all over the world, and that's just really cool. And so I set up at craft shows and started selling the different jewelry I've made. And I've been doing that for years, and it's fun because I like meeting people, and it's always just interesting being at these events. But I began finally to use the same materials to make other things than jewelry. And the first thing I really started making was the Christmas trees. And they have been a lot of fun. And I did win an award with them, and that made me feel quite happy about the whole thing. And I thought, okay. This is just a much larger expansion of the same idea. This is being made for Old Wadena Park as part of a public art grant. The more little detail I put in there, the more fun people have going, ooh, look at that, ooh, look, because they find, it takes them a while to find these little things. As much as I can, I use beads because if I've decided to use beads as a medium, I want to use as many beads as possible. I made clover for my rabbit to eat, and daisies, And these actually will go in a bend of the river because these are supposed to represent marsh marigolds. And they will look much more like it when I have them in the right setting. This is supposed to be fun. This isn't an exact deal. It is not going to follow the actual terrain of the park. It will be bits that are put together. You know, I'll put turtles on a log somewhere in the river. All the things in the pie plate are going to be in the river because I am making a river that will cut across one end of this. I'll have the bog at the other end. All this stuff, including this little turtle and frog, which I'll tuck in there somewhere, go in the bog. And we wanted to use that to teach about wetlands. And we've been, when I say we, I'm talking about the Old Wadena Society, of which I am a member. We've been constructing a bog walk out on this wetland for several years now, doing it little by little as we can afford it. And I wanted to, because it's in a remote area of the park, I wanted to incorporate it into this to try and encourage people, at least let people know about it and encourage them to go down and visit it. So I'm building a bog with a tile bead walk out onto it as part of this landscape. The model I built was totally flat because I did it in a big hurry. This will actually, I've got more foam here and some foam glue, and I'm going to take this out on the front porch and start carving. And I will carve the river down and I will carve the bog down, but then I will build some hills up and I'll have a bank and hills. None of these things will be as crowded as they are. They'll be scattered out. And what I really have needed tons of are piles of brush to fill in underneath the trees. Almost everything here has been made the same way by just twisting beads on wire in little loops. The difference comes, do you use big loops, do you use little loops, do you use small beads, do you use big beads, what colors do you use, how long do you make the stems? But the technique is not much different. And I never really know when I start things how to do it. It would be nice if I did, but I don't. I don't have a formula. I don't use a formula. I just start. I'll make more grass out of embroidery thread. I started a little corner last night. I kind of cut this out because there's some sedge grass around the edge of the bog. And then there's some cattails, and then as you get higher into it, it actually gets drier and there's different kinds of brush. But I wanted some sedge grass just around the edge. So I'll actually just cut out a little strip once I get it embroidered, and that will get glued down into the edge of the bog. I've had to do research for this because I know how to do everything with the beads. I had to do some research to find out what to do to make a river. And I have ended up with a product I haven't really used in jewelry making, but it's made for jewelry, called ice resin. And it's a 2-part epoxy resin, jewelry grade, very clear, can be colored with oil paint, will not yellow over time. And I had to get huge amounts of it because normally it's used in very small applications, and I'm going to build an entire river out of it. But it lets me put a sand base in my riverbed and scatter rocks along it and put frogs and fish actually in the river. And I find this really exciting and full of possibilities because I can actually do this indoors or outdoors for almost any place in the country. I might have a little bit of trouble trying to make an acacia cactus. I've been thinking about how I would do that. But you know, I can find a way to make cool little settings with beads, and it's really a lot more fun than making bracelets and necklaces. I just love this. This is built purely for fun. And my hope is, because some people will never look at it. Nobody likes every kind of art. But people have gone quite silly over the model. They've really spent a lot of time going, oh, look, you see that? Oh, look, oh, I found a bird's nest. Well, if I do a lot of this and put a lot of animals and little things in here for people to find, I hope it will encourage them to look at the real thing more carefully, or at least to notice when they're walking down a path that there's a wildflower next to it. Because I think one of the things that art does is make people notice the life around them in a different way.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed the show, and we look forward to seeing you next week right here on Common Ground. If you have a segment idea for Common Ground pertaining to North Central Minnesota, contact us at legacy@lptv.org or call us at 218-333-3022. To view this episode or any Common Ground segment, visit us at lptv.org/Common Ground. For individual segments or copies of Common Ground, please call 218-333-3020. Common Ground is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. If you enjoyed this segment of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org.